Hi, this is Jed, and before we start this episode of Frustration Nation, this is just a little content warning that today's episode deals with sensitive topics like sexual assault. So just wanted to give all of you a heads up before you listen to today's episode.
All right. Hi. Welcome back to another episode of Frustration Nation. And here with me today, I have
The same people.
the same people.
The same people.
The same old. Damn it.
What will we describe as last episode? The brothers in suffering?
Yeah, brothers in suffering.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jed.
Hi, I'm Drake.
And I'm Kim. And we're the Powerpuff Girls.
Oh, who's whom? The green one is the badass one, right?
They're
I'm
all
not the
pretty
green one.
badass.
I mean, I want to be the blue one.
Which one is the soft one?
The blue one.
They all correspond to the Gotham City Sirens, right? Like
What?
the blue one is Harley Quinn,
Okay.
and then the red one is Ivy, and then presumably the green one is Catwoman.
Yeah, but Ivy's green.
That's the personalities don't exactly track.
I suppose not.
Yeah. So I mean, last week was our first like official episode, the last episode that we did, the one about the virus Vanguard, and I had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, and that topic kind of, I think one of our friends, she predicted that it would die out within the week. And then I think someone else went to make like villain versions of them. Like,
Yeah, that was a parody version. I think the writer was Jonathan Lim, who's a local like satirist and comedian actor. He does these shows with Hosan Leong called Chestnuts. So they used to do it like a yearly
they look
parody
pretty
review.
cute, actually.
So yeah, like I can't remember the names of all of them off the top of my head, but I know there was the Ambassador. There was a Xeno the Warrior Princess.
Oh, I like that
The
one.
warrior prince.
Yeah, the one that's literally two-faced that has two heads.
Yeah, and I was like wondering why did that particular design had two heads, and you actually gave a pretty good reason for it.
Thank you. Yeah, the idea that there's one that is like the apologetic face that she puts out to the public.
Can you think about the children? Like,
Oh, yeah,
what
yeah, to try and
what
win
about our
sympathy.
country? Like, oh my gosh.
There was Fat Chope, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
fat choke.
And
So, I
the
think-
antibiotic.
Antibiotic. It's so funny. And then on the cover page underneath it said, "Brought to you without wasting taxpayer dollars."
Oh.
Such a
Panic
burn.
boy.
Panic Boy.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So, before continuing, I wanted to make a few corrections to last week's episode. If no one has like contacted me to correct because no one really listened. But but yeah, I think at one point I called an artist Jason Leong when I meant James Leong because I have a friend named Jason, so I got confused. And then at another point, this was the more egregious one. I referred to the liver bird, the Liverpool symbol, as a dragon, but it's a bird. I have repented.
It
I
looks
didn't even
like
notice.
a very aggressive bird, if that's a bird.
Yeah, it is a very aggressive bird, and I think it's the symbol of the Liverpool town. So like more than just the football club, like there are traditional roots in that symbol being representative of the place of Liverpool.
Dragons are essentially aggressive birds. So
That's true. Dragons are scaly birds. What are dragons if not scaly birds? So yeah, that's those things out of the way.
You know, it's kind of like how people say dinosaurs might have had feathers, but
Yeah.
we prefer to look at them like these giant lizards instead.
yeah.
Right, yeah. I think the traditional depiction of dinosaurs was scaly, was more reptilian, and then gradually our understanding of them evolved, and now we understand that most dinosaurs have feathers, but it's also not a hard and fast rule, and it kind of depends on like to what extent the feathers were functional, and to what extent the feathers were kind of like they were just there. They didn't really help them like conserve warmth or help them fly or anything like that.
Wait, I'm gonna sound like an idiot. Like, aren't chickens evolved from dinosaurs? Wait.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they
I
are.
think
Yeah,
like the idea is that it's broken up into avian dinosaurs and non-avian dinosaurs, right? So like the structure, the skeletal structure of a chicken is very similar to the skeletal structure of a T-Rex. And I think one of my favorite Tumblr posts was this drawing that said, "There's no rule that a T-Rex can't be a fat bird." And it was just a T-Rex but as a fat bird.
Oh,
That's so cute.
Yeah,
Like
and
Big
it
Bird
was like
from Sesame
yes, with a car for scale. And this is this giant like fat bird.
This is how
But,
you know
yeah.
this podcast is just made of people who were bullied in school. Like,
Oh, exactly, yeah. Way to call us out like that. But also, it's the truth. It's the God's honest truth. Yeah, I once had the school counselor gather everyone who had a problem with me and sat them around in a circle
Oh my
and had them
God.
tell me all of them what their problem with me was.
What?
And she called it peer mediation.
oh,
the
that's
fuck?
horrible.
Yeah, so I'm not recovered from that. This was like 10, 11 years ago. I'm still not okay.
I wouldn't be okay as well. What the fuck?
Oh, Singaporean schools are something.
Yeah, I think she decided that was her way to like get me to leave the school.
Wow.
And
I had a
worked
form
so
teacher
well.
ask me if I was crazy.
Aww.
After I got diagnosed with depression, she sat me down and then she asked, "Are you crazy?" And then I was like,
Was it like? Do you think it was genuine ignorance or was it her being mean?
I think a bit of both.
Yeah, and I think like I guess that's where most people are, and I think the kind of the mindsets that we have as a country. In a futile attempt to segue this into our topic tonight, I think there is a lot of like, you know, you can pull on a thread and see where the origin of that thought is.
Yeah, where the
Yeah.
collective image of everything matters more than the details, the actual details and matters and substance is behind every
people's like
issue.
thoughts and feelings and people as individuals, like it's so hard for us to think of people as individuals because we're conditioned to think of ourselves and think of people as cogs in a machine.
That's a long title for the episode.
But nice segue.
Colon part 1.
Okay.
So today's articles, right? Drake was the one who started looking at them and pointing them out. So would you like to go through these pieces?
Okay. So a few days ago, Channel News Asia did a segment which was released on YouTube that basically talked about how cases are not necessarily going down because, you know, ever since Friday was like the first time we had less than 1,000 cases after 4 days.
Yeah.
And I think on Saturday or Sunday, CNA did the segment and it said that basically they interviewed this infectious disease expert called Dale Fisher, who is a professor at NUS or something. He said that the numbers are not actually going down, but it's a function of the tests. So basically, anyone in the dorms who have dorms that have high infections rates, anybody living in those dorms who display symptoms are just deemed to have the virus and they're not immediately tested and they're just sent for isolation. So this amounted for up to about a few hundred people, a few hundred migrant workers, and they weren't included in the official numbers because they weren't tested lah, so not official. Yeah. But then last night the government came out and said, no, we are doing lots of testing and testing capacity remains the same. But I think that's the word we should take note of, capacity, because that's what they really focused on. So like in the press conference yesterday, Gan Kim Yong, our father, our godfather,
Health Minister.
Okay, this is his quote lah. I typed out as he said. So our testing capacity for migrant workers is about 3,000 a day. We have not reduced it. Instead, we have been increasing the capacity of testing for our migrant workers. The rate of testing has not slowed down. A total of 21,000 migrant workers living in dorms have been tested since the start of the outbreak. This means that 1 in 15 migrant workers have been tested. This is far higher than any testing rates seen in other countries. So he mostly talked about the capacity, yeah, and then he then said every positive test is added to our daily count, which also doesn't really answer the question of what about those who didn't get the test. And then he then said, for dorms where rates of infections are extremely high, our efforts are focused on isolating those who are symptomatic even without a confirmed COVID-19 test. So he then kind of contradicted himself.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then today, just a few hours ago, around 6 plus, CNA and Straits Times both published articles confirming that migrant workers with COVID-19 symptoms isolated before getting tested to prevent potential transmission. And in the article from Channel News Asia, Kenneth Mark, we know who he is. He said that he acknowledged that the number of COVID-19 cases may be higher than what it is stated in the official report. So after the whole circle we just went through, we had to go through all of that just to get this information that numbers may be higher than what we got.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, but I mean, I think as far as it is, I feel like so far we are grading everything on kind of a scale. It's like when this comes up, people will say, oh, but what about America? But what about China? And I think so far, just speaking as someone who doesn't have any of a background in any of this, I feel that the way the cases have been measured in Singapore has been satisfactory. I'm sure it's not 100%, but I think there has been an effort to quantify it and test it as much as possible. But I do understand why there's cause for confusion.
Yeah. And it's understandable that they have to allocate resources to where it's needed, especially, we can infer that people with symptoms living in high infection rate places probably do have the virus. So we can use the testing capabilities for somewhere else. And they also already said that these cases will be tested and confirmed eventually. So it's not like this won't be added to the numbers eventually. So I don't know why they didn't just come out.
Numbers right now.
Yeah, so I don't know why they didn't just come out and say.
I think just the way that it was phrased and how some people, maybe people who are acting in bad faith, they'll take this and be like, the government is suppressing the number, Yeah. But it's not really like that. It's more of like...
Yeah. I think that's what I was getting at.
We have to test as many people as possible, but then we need to go and test in the places where we're not really sure yet, whereas some dormitories... almost 100% you have it, because the entire dormitory, everyone in your room has it, you probably got it as well.
Yeah.
And you don't have to test it. And it's a waste of testing equipment.
Yeah, it is definitely more efficient.
But even then they will eventually be tested as well. It's not like that will never be added to the tally.
Yeah. It's not like any of these measures were wrong. I think my main problem with it was how they kind of
dealt with
how they couldn't just be straightforward with us about
it's a matter of communication, right? I think that's what they're getting at, Drake. Yeah.
It's saying the testing is delayed. They're not suppressing the numbers. They're going to add them eventually.
Yeah, I think this is just a time of very heightened doubt, a very heightened amount of doubt in authorities, and we have seen how other countries have suppressed their numbers and how there's just so much suspicion that goes around. So it's very difficult to take something at good faith, at face value.
That's true.
I kind of understand why there's a lot of that going around now. But at the same time, it's just kind of exhausting to need to second guess everything, because I think there's a place for that. There's a place to question authority, and otherwise we wouldn't have this podcast.
Yeah, and I can understand in a way, because if the general public have the impression that these numbers are not real, that it is a higher number than it actually is, then it will induce panic. And what was I going to say? Fuck. Oh my god.
Well, it was a very cogent train of thought until
and then
you
it
got
hit
to
a
the
wall.
end.
What the fuck? What the fuck was that? Okay,
Skimble Shanks, the railway cat.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, so it makes sense that maybe they don't want to have the potential to create such a panic in the first place, so it's easier for them to just be like, no, it's not true. Well, that they don't talk about these measures because they don't want to induce any form of misguided panic. But like, this is kind of not the time to treat us like kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be honest with like everything you're doing, and be transparent. And so, like, this is a very
There is a very parental relationship that we have with our government overall. Yeah, I think that all of this can be taken out of context very easily. So politics is hard, language is hard, and I think sometimes as Singaporeans we prioritize polite language over factual language.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And I think like politics is hard and communication is hard, but our instinct is to want to simplify it and to want to get straightforward, easy answers.
Yeah, that's true.
And in a perfect world, we all would have, but we do not live in a perfect world, in case we haven't noticed yet.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What?
Drake is somewhere in his utopia.
Drake is doing
floating in a
just
bubble.
fine.
Yeah. I wish we could all be Drake.
What virus? What virus? What are you talking about? I still have my job. What?
Oh, buddy.
Ow.
Okay,
It's
okay.
okay. That's why we do this. It's therapy. I mean, I began with like discussing a bullying incident from 10 years ago, so nothing is off the table here. Yeah, so I think that's like with regards to the testing, and this is the whole issue of this is because of the very high volume of cases in the foreign worker dormitories. So I think we can segue into the general perception of this and what the reaction to that has been, the kind of language or rhetoric used against foreign workers, and how people have talked about it and discussed it on social media.
There is this post a while back from the Ministry of Manpower where there are actually foreign workers who are coming below the videos to comment about the food that we're getting is kind of unacceptable. I saw one guy said something like they just boiled tomatoes and chicken and they blended it and gave it to them as a curry.
What?
Right, yeah, and especially because like now this is the month of Ramadan, right, and like the proper kind of procedures are not in place for them to be able to have their iftar and to be able to break fast. Like it is just like even worse than normal when you have all of these additional religious guidelines that they're following during this month for those who are Muslim. And they were saying that the food isn't separated out. They were saying that the curry and the rice are all mixed together. And they were also saying that the rice is often very undercooked. So, like, it's, and there have been so many pictures going around of just how bad it looks. And it's really galling when people are like, oh, this is already so much better than what they would have back home, or they should suck it up and they should be grateful for this food that they have. And, it's just like it's so awful that people can say that, and it's not like it's free to not say that is what I always go back to. Not being an asshole is free. And this is a generalization, but I really feel like you can form a tree that's like a pattern. X leads to Y leads to Z, and I feel like a lot of it is dehumanization. Is if we classify them as less than human, and if we diminish their human needs and their requirements and the standard of living, then we feel less guilty about it and we absolve ourselves of the guilt of, oh, these are the people on whose backs the entire country is built. So therefore, it is like a thought process to justify and explain away and rationalize, and at the end of the day, I don't have any part in this. This is not my fault. So I feel like that's where all of it traces back to.
If you were to look at like Singapore from this psychoanalytical point of view, so I guess in a sense, a lot of us aren't class conscious. A lot of people don't believe that poverty exists here. I feel like migrant workers
like you can't
exist.
say inequality.
Yeah, you can't say that. Otherwise, you just get ragged on online. And then on top of that, you have the migrant workers who sort of exist as a class subconscious, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I think we've been meaning to watch this together. A Land Imagined, and A Land
I've
Imagined.
seen it, yeah.
I forgot who is the director. Do you remember the director? It's done in a very dream-like way. It's almost, I would describe it as like a surreal horror.
Right, yeah. It's by Yo Xiu-hua.
Yeah, like going back to the theme of the subconscious. I don't want to spoil too much, but it feels like the plot exists in a place where you don't really know what is real and what is not. A Land Imagined.
Yeah, it's classified as a neo-noir mystery thriller, and like for anyone who hasn't heard of it, like I'll just very quickly run through the plot summary. It's about a foreign worker who's disappeared, and there's a police investigator who's trying to uncover like the truth of the disappearance. Is he dead? What's happened? So that involves him going to the dorms and interviewing the people who knew him, especially like his close friends, interviewing the supervisor and like the supervisor's son, and also forming this kind of relationship with a lady from PRC from China who runs an internet cafe that this guy frequented. So it has sort of the framework of a neo-noir. There's like an investigator and there's a mystery and there's a femme fatale kind of archetype, but all of this is in service of telling the story of the foreign workers and the way foreign workers are invisible in Singapore.
So it's on Netflix. I think it's on Netflix. So if you guys are looking for something to check out, do go look at it.
Yeah,
it's
and
a
it's
pretty good
95
local
minutes.
film. Yeah.
It's I feel like I do have mixed feelings about it, but I saw it in the context of like a benefit screening for foreign workers. And there were like foreign worker advocacy groups and NGOs and representatives of that, as well as like there was this man who had founded a collective of artists and writers, and he is himself a foreign worker who like came to Singapore in the mid 2000s, and so there was kind of an atmosphere of the message being more important than the movie. But I mean, I don't fault them for that, especially in that context. But as a film critic, it was like I felt like there really were things about the movie that I just wish they had taken it in a bit of a different direction. It's like if you had done this a little bit more or done this a little bit less, it would have had more of an impact on me. So that's kind of how I approached it.
I went to the screening with most of my cohort. I think the director of photography is actually a lecturer at in my school, and so we were invited to a screening of it. And
Hideho Urata.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And the shots are amazing in the movie. So
yeah, it like looks a lot more expensive than it actually was, which is a difficult thing to do, and which is like the best case scenario if you're making an independent film. Yeah, and there's something that I heard about from one of my brother's lecturers who is also, I think he has like a position in one of these NGOs that advocates for foreign workers, and he said something that was really, really chilling. He said that there are supervisors who will injure their workers in such a way that you can't tell that the injuries were inflicted on them. So like it will, if they go for a checkup, it will look like it was an accident, but actually they had been specifically hurt in such a way to make it look like that.
Why?
As like a punishment or something.
Oh.
So like this is something that's a lot more common than we think.
I think we're gonna have to look into that more another
right,
day.
Yeah.
But
Like
I don't think
this is
that's
all unsourced.
That's beyond
the realm of plausibility. And I think like that's also something which you see in A Land Imagined. Like you see the negligence or the cruelty of some of the people who run these foreign worker dormitories or run the work sites, and that is like a key part of the plot. Is how culpable are the people who run the sites? Were they responsible in the disappearance or the death of the foreign worker character that is being investigated in that movie?
I mean, this whole thing about trying to keep things away from the general eye. Remember that dorm operator that locked up 20 workers in their room? Joylicious.
Joylicious, yeah. It's just very dark that it's named the Joylicious.
Oh gosh.
It's like, in all those dystopian things, it's like the happy company. This was what? Sorry to bother you, right?
What does Joylicious
Yeah,
do?
it's what kind of... They run the dorm. They operate the dorm, right?
Yeah, they're the actual dorm operators or something.
Also,
They're
that's
just people.
also that's just their job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I mean, like, I feel like this is where I want to jump in and say I'm not trying to speak out of a place of self-righteousness. And if I'm going to be honest, like, this is not something that directly affects me, and I can't tell you that every day I'm thinking about the lives of foreign workers and I'm actively volunteering or donating, and I'm not doing any of those things.
Yeah.
But I don't think that means I don't have a place to call out a lack of compassion, as it were, because I think at the end of the day, compassion is free, and you can say that it's lip service and you can say that it's insincere, but it's better than actively being xenophobic and airing your views and being an asshole and like not having any of the awareness that, hey, this isn't a good thing to say.
Like just saying things like, oh, it's okay, like the numbers are mostly the foreign workers, like it's okay one. It's kind of
that's dehumanizing, right?
Yeah, it hurts me, like
yeah
a bit physically.
And it's, I think, like, here's the thing, right? When you say that, then there are people who will say, oh, who do you think you are? You think that you're some sort of savior, or you're some sort of saint. And I feel like everything becomes a purity test.
Yeah.
Which is really, really frustrating. And this is one of the, like, overarching themes of all the topics we're covering this episode, which is how things look and the importance that is placed on how things appear.
My brain is not working. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Nothing to apologize for. I mean, ultimately, we are, like, not every episode is going to have the laser focus that last week's did, because not every week we're going to be given the gift of Virus Vanguard, where we have 5 characters that we can do a deep dive into and talk about the trillionaire care lady. So the structure of it is that it's going to be a little less focused, but I think there still is there still is connective tissue running through it, and all of the articles that Drake and you sourced and that we're gonna are sort of the springboard for our conversation in this episode. There's still something that connects to all of it, so it's okay to feel like it's a bit floaty, because I think that's, hopefully people are here to listen to us talk and not necessarily like are here for the topics only.
But like, speaking of us talking, haha, very smart. There have been criticisms online about how talking and faffing about and singing songs like Home is an empty distraction away from real action. Wow, that rhymes. And there was a post that was going around which said that there was that thing that everyone did where everyone went to the window at 8 p.m. and screamed.
Right, and what it was supposed to be everyone coming to the window at 7:55 p.m. and singing in unison, singing Home in unison, but of course that's a very difficult thing to coordinate, so it just became people going, oh, out the window and howling, right? This is Home,
like,
oh, Lee. and like I feel like the wonderful thing about it, I mean, I don't mean to indulge in this much schadenfreude, but there's a famous video of a phone falling, and you see the phone falling from the window because the flashlight was on and everyone was waving their flashlights, and that to me sums it up perfectly. It is like, this is what it is. It's kind of like, remember that time when there was a sinkhole that opened up in front of the White House? Like, there's such ironic significance in the phone falling and that being used to represent what this was like. Because I think before there was this thing we had, everyone stand outside your window. I mean, not stand outside your window.
Just can you step out for a bit?
That's a bit hard to do.
Through the window.
But everyone clap out your window, right? And clap
out your
forward.
window.
Yeah. Stick your hands out of the window, I guess.
There were a lot of angry responses to it, actually, like from healthcare workers themselves. And particularly one post that went viral. And the thing is that, okay, I kind of know all these people who made the post and then like went back and forth about it. And it's like, I feel like I might have some personal bias here because of I just know these people, right? And then they said that it's not helping the frontliners. They don't need clapping. They just need a raise in their pay.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's more for us.
I think like the thing is there is an argument to be made about psychological well-being, to be made about the collective raising of spirits, but I feel like it does go back to it goes back to a collective lack of sincerity, that every action that anyone does has to kind of be second guessed. Therefore, we can't take it on face value that this is something we're doing to encourage somebody. There has to be an ulterior motive to it. So while other cultures and other societies perhaps are accepting of this and it's something that comes naturally to them, to us it's weird, right? So we're like, oh, paise to go and clap for people, paise to sing songs for people. So then there must be an ulterior motive, there must be something else, and therefore the ulterior motive is, oh, this is to make yourself feel better, and this is to make yourself feel like you've done something when actually you haven't. So that could be true to a degree, but it is also reductive to say that that is the extent of it.
Yeah, like, because this post that went a bit viral, one of the points that this person brought up was that how many of these people who clapped also like went to rush to buy bubble tea on the last day that it was allowed to be open, you know? And like you said, it's kind of a purity test, but it's not mutually exclusive. Like, sure, you can participate in these so-called masturbatory gestures, as this post says, but you can also be ordering from your local hawker and kopitiam stores, you know. You could also be doing good things. You might not do all of them, but you could be doing some of them. And you could also be staying at home and not rushing to buy bubble tea like an idiot. So I don't know why. There's just this assumption that, okay, just because you do one slightly irritating thing, you have to do all the other irritating things as well, because we all exist in a binary.
Right, that it's a package deal, right? And I think, it's... Okay, for example, like I've heard things where in New York there is... there's a Broadway star called Brian Stokes Mitchell, and he's a Tony Award winner. He is the president, I think, of the Broadway League, and the chairman of the Actors Fund, and he had COVID, and he recovered from COVID. So at 7 p.m., I don't know whether it's every day, he like opens his window and he sings The Impossible Dream, the song from Man of La Mancha. The dream, the impossible dream, right? And I feel like if I were a healthcare worker and I knew that Brian Stokes Mitchell was doing that, I would appreciate it. And I think like there's something different to that. Like fundamentally, it's the same thing, right? It's open your window, sing a song. Like there's nothing that he is doing in that specific action that is different than someone attempting to sing Home out of their window. But I think the story behind it, like, it has a bit more resonance and a bit more meaning. And I feel like it also goes back to how much people can find solace in the arts and how much it is downplayed and discredited, especially in a society like Singapore that places so little emphasis on the arts and invalidates artists and what they create at every single turn. So to me, it is like, that's why I didn't have a problem at all with when Dick Lee had gathered 90 singers and they did like this mass virtual choir singing Home. Because they were all singing Home. They were not going, "Ow!" Not half of them were going, "Ow!" out the window. So to me, it is like, in the midst of it, something gets lost. And when you scale it up to that scale, where it's not something that is as basic as clapping your hands, and it's just even just a little bit more complicated than that, then it just loses everything, and then the structure kind of crumbles underneath it, you see.
It did feel nice. Like, I didn't participate in it, but like it felt nice to be sitting by my computer, which is next to the window, and then all of a sudden hearing like a lot of people clapping and cheering, and then looking at everyone standing at the window and like doing like flashing their phones. Like, it's a pretty nice feeling. It kind of has like a feeling of togetherness. Yeah. So so I don't want to completely dismiss it because it is kind of nice. Like, it has good intentions, but like I understand, like, it's understandable that, okay, yeah, that really doesn't do anything, but it's nothing wrong with it either.
Yeah, it's
sorry, I keep cutting. Like, we can do both, you know. We can do this kind of meaningless but feels good, like, but feel good kind of things, but also like help out in a sense, like donating or obeying social distancing rules and all that. Like we can do both.
Or like actually pressure people, like the authorities in power to raise pay for essential workers, right? You can do both.
No, it's okay. I mean, like what I wanted to say was I think it really depends. So it's like the way that Drake feels is valid, but then the way that someone else feels where they feel that it's kind of hollow is valid as well. It's just like all of these things exist on a spectrum. So someone may be getting something out of it and you may not, and someone else may not, and then we just kind of have to accept that. So there's like what Drake says is true. There's nothing inherently harmful about it. Like, yes, it can be a bit silly or it can be a bit meaningless to someone, but it can also give you a sense of comfort and feel like, oh, there actually is a community. And I think like it's just at some point it crosses over from one into the other, and that threshold differs based on your own lived experiences.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So someone could be more easily annoyed at it than somebody
Yeah,
else.
and like I mean, I'm not a healthcare worker. I'm not an essential worker who is working their ass off on low pay. So I guess like it wouldn't anger me in that sense. So
yeah. And I think that's important. It's important to kind of try to put yourself in everyone else's shoes a little bit. And I think that Singaporeans as a whole don't really have that ability. Like,
that's why we need Care Lady.
That's why we need Care Lady, the avatar of empathy and compassion.
We need Care Ladies.
We need her to
pay all essential workers.
It's the joke, right? The joke on Twitter where it was like, Alfred tells Bruce Wayne, "You're a billionaire. Why not just redistribute?" And Bruce Wayne is, "No, I must dress up as a bat." I feel like that's like Care Lady is that writ large on just this epic scale.
God.
But yeah, as I was saying in the previous episode, I think it might have even been our test episode, like episode 0. I was saying that I feel it's an oversimplification, of course, it's a generalization, and I must issue that caveat. But I feel like for a lot of Singaporeans, if it's not something that directly affects them, then it's not a real problem to them.
Yeah.
And like it's just like you're just incapable of framing it in any other way. Then this doesn't affect me, therefore it's not a real problem. So yeah, I think like to move on from that, right? To move on from the singing and yelling out your window thing, that there is an argument to be made either way, but then it's like nobody can go into everyone's mind and find and dig out their motivations except Care Lady.
Who understands how we all feel.
Yeah, she does. Okay, so do you want to do the snitching?
The snitching? Oh, who are we snitching on?
We're reporting on snitching, I guess. Yeah.
Oh,
We're
okay,
snitching on
the
snitching, yeah.
Yes,
all
that's
right. Jet, you take this away.
Okay, so what happens is there was this... I think, well, we're just going to talk about this right now. But there was an influencer, like a Malay influencer named Atika Mazlan. And what she did was she had done this video, I don't know whether it was an Instagram live story or something, where she was trying to call out home-based businesses and was saying that they should be subject to more regulations. And very, very shortly after that, there were these laws that were quickly passed. And basically what the laws say is that you can work from home, but basically it rules out anything that's a physical product. Because you can't have anyone leave the house to go and get it, but you also can't deliver it via third party. So there's no way for, if you're baking something at home, or if you're making like, if you're crocheting something, there's no way to get that physical product to the person who bought it from you or ordered it from you online. And therefore it just like rules out so many home-based businesses that people are turning to, especially now, especially during the circuit breaker period. And for Muslims, especially during Hari Raya, where this is like, they're no longer able to have bazaars and night markets and communal kind of celebrations, and this is like a vestige of that, like a little bit of that. So yeah, so she had this like big thing where she had an interview with Sujimi Muhammad, where she was saying that she didn't intend to spoil things for people running home businesses when she raised the question online last week, but wanted an answer to confusing rules, as she herself was planning to sell home-based brownies. So I think like what she said was it basically made her like public enemy number one, especially among the Malay community, where she was viewed as like a race traitor, because this is something that is seen as like it's not only Malays who do home-based baking businesses, but it's very much like part of the community, and especially right now it's a way to sustain it and to support your neighbors and other people whom you know. So the regulations, like, there is a reason why they're there, but at the same time it's completely ridiculous to say you can work from home but there's no way to get the product to someone who ordered it. You can't deliver it yourself, you can't have a third party deliver it, they can't come to your house to collect it, so there's no, like, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to teleport it.
I mean, look, if you think about like Grab food, right? You know, you're grabbing fruit from a restaurant. Someone still has to go to that location and bring it to your house, and you use a third party like company. So what's really the difference? It's just the difference is just that it's a house.
And if you're found to violate it, you could be fined $1,000.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Grab has that service now. Grab has the pickup service now where I can send stuff to you.
But it's illegal. It's illegal to in the context of home-based business.
But we can still send mail.
Yeah, so therefore that's why the regulations are confusing, and I think right now what Atika is trying to do is trying to distance herself from this by saying it wasn't because of me and it wasn't because of what I said that these regulations were put into place, but it's very hard to not draw the correlation. And there's this like the go-to resource on this is a great Twitter thread by
Pantat Kau.
by Pantat Kau, your ass. Pantat Kau is Malay for your ass. So yeah, I'm gonna read part of it, and it's about the struggles of Malay entrepreneurship.
Okay, yeah.
And how
because we are all Chinese, so like it's hard for us to say.
Yeah.
We will link the Twitter thread in the YouTube description.
In the description. Yeah, and Drake, that's a very important clarification to make. So like none of us can say that we have skin in the game. Like that there is like emotional or personal investment for us in what happens to Atika, or how like her relationship with the rest of the community has been soured, because that's not our place. But
I ordered a lot of cookies and
They're
cookies
so
from different
good.
people.
That's true, right? Yeah.
And it has personally affected me in this way.
I think that's
and
I'm sorry to presume that you weren't personally affected.
and we understand that
Malay.
these businesses are how some households, how some individuals sustain themselves. So in that sense, we can understand and empathize. Yeah.
I have a friend who does this as a side hustle, actually. She actually personally delivers the cookies herself, and they're amazing cookies. They're brown sugar chocolate chip. That's where the name I gave you guys comes from. Brown sugar chocolate chip cookies.
That's
And
actually
they
a
are
great bit of background.
I want to try.
Yeah, then they are like, they have like that. There's brown butter in them. Sort of. She had an order for Sunday, 36 orders, and that was the day she received a notice about like her having to cease her home bakery and everything.
Oh my god.
Right, yeah. So like it isn't just affecting Malays, but
Oh no,
because
it's
it takes
Ramadan
place,
now.
Yeah, because it takes place in the context of Ramadan, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's why, and I think like it feels like I guess to them it feels even this little bit we can't have it. We can't have this little bit, it's been taken away. And historically minorities are always subject to more scrutiny and more like it's just harsher for them, and if somebody quote unquote steps out of line, they're made an example of more than the majority would be. And it's not just like this here, it's like this everywhere. So I think that's where that was also raised in the Twitter thread, where they feel the glare more. And it's like the spotlight has been shifted further onto them. And well, in a time when we don't need that, and when people need to feel like, and I think this kind of extends to all the little bits and pieces. Like, if you don't wear a mask, you're fined this amount. If you leave your house for this reason, XYZ, this thing happens to you. Like, to bring it back to the guy, the guy who got a jail sentence for like not returning immediately to his home when he arrived back from another country, but instead going out to eat. So that guy like got a 6-week, yeah, and it is not my intention to bring up Bak Kut Teh Man in the context of talking about the Malay community. So I'm sorry. That's why I didn't say Bak Kut Teh, Berlin. But yeah.
I mean, okay, but we just need to clarify once again, we're Chinese people. We have no really authority to talk, really authority to commentate on it. But this thread is just really good. It's got a really good amount of resources.
And
I encourage everyone to listen.
Yeah, and I learned a lot.
Take a look at it.
Yeah, so it's like your ass is really doing a great public service here, you know, and I think we could all stand to listen more to your ass and to people like your ass.
Yeah, I really learned a lot from Pantat Kau.
Yeah, thank you, your ass. But yeah, I think like that's the thing. I guess it's just the number one thing that most minorities want out of the majorities is to listen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is to just hear their point of view and acknowledge that what doesn't affect us does affect them, and that it doesn't mean that it's any less legitimate. So I think this is another reminder of that and kind of places that in that context. But yeah, the reason why I brought up the Bak Kut Teh guy was because he got a 6-week jail sentence, but then recently it came out that this molester got a 2-week jail sentence. Right? So that's the way things are.
Oh.
Drake's not laughing because he finds this amusing.
No, yeah.
He's laughing. He's getting Joker fight.
No, Drake's laughing to numb the pain, which I have been there, you know. But yeah, it's just so galling. It's like it feels very disproportionate.
And the 2 weeks,
it feels like a lot of the time.
The 2 weeks was considered the more severe punishment as compared to what he was originally given.
And it was all justified with, but he has good results. So we don't want to destroy his life because he does well in school. And that made me so angry.
I have so much to say about this.
Yeah, it really, really bears out like how much emphasis, and
it's
it does
all
go
image.
back to, it's all about how things look, yeah.
Like, cause I have a lot of things to say. So like, okay lah. First I should give some credit where credit is due. Like, the High Court, so-called the High Court did put out a new framework on sentencing perpetrators. Like, after this whole Terence Xiao thing, Terence Xiao is the molester. Terence Xiao, molester.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do
that should follow his name.
Terence Xiao, molester. Okay, so after this case, the High Court put out a new framework on sentencing perpetrators, and it kind of made it so that now grades and academic potential of the perp would be irrelevant in sentencing unless the good grades can be linked to the capacity to rehabilitate, which is kind of a step in progress, I guess. But like,
that's still shitty.
It is.
Yeah, but it's incremental.
Very fucking shitty. But
it's credit where credit is due. You know?
But like, the more serious sentencing is 2 weeks. Like, I don't know whether this framework came in as Terence Xiao was being sentenced or after.
We all getting locked in for more than 2 weeks. That's nothing. It's like
exactly 2 weeks is like the lifespan of yogurt, for fuck's sake. I have relationships with
your
yogurt.
sentence is the lifespan of yogurt.
Exactly. Like, it's like, this is the amount of time that's like just to show that there is punishment, but isn't really a punishment. Like, it's just for show again. Like, just for show.
It's all performative.
Just for show, but also like, this is a good boy, isn't he? He's a good
Singaporean boy.
Yeah, he's a good Singaporean boy who has good grades. That's why he only needs like two weeks of jail. And you mean, okay, so before this, this guy, like people's grades were a significant factor, like their exam results were a significant factor in whether they could be charged for.
From the
severity.
article, this is what I inferred.
Oof.
And that was always part of the national debate, right? Which, okay, is another thing. Like, my main gripe about this whole thing is, why is there even so much national debate on giving perpetrators a chance? Like, not to say that none of them deserve rehabilitation, but like, where is all this talk when it comes to other crimes? Like, aren't we known
For sure,
Aren't we known for having heavy and strict laws? Like, I thought we were proud of that. So, what's so special
And it's like
about sexual
all
assault
over
perpetrators?
We hung a guy over weed.
Exactly.
We did, yeah. That's what I mean. That's kind of what you expect from Singapore, and even like the increased campaign. If you go to the MRT stations and you see all the ads, you could get this amount of years. You could get 6 years, 6 to 8 years in jail for outraging a woman's modesty, for touching a woman inappropriately. Like, that is just not borne out in the sentencing.
Exactly.
You know, and
What's so special about sexual assault perpetrators that the first thing we think of is whether they are doing well in school? Like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Like, do we just not care about the destruction that happens in a victim's life?
And when everyone says like, oh, you don't want to destroy their life, well, they should have thought about that
Exactly.
before doing this. And what about the life of the survivor?
Exactly. Like,
How is their life not
if a
destroyed?
victim's life is put on halt because of the trauma, like if they have to live with the consequences of someone else's actions, then fuck yes, a perpetrator deserves to have his life halted. Right?
Yeah, like I mean, for example,
You do
in
the crime, you pay the time or
Yeah.
something.
like in the US, like if you are sentenced for if something like that happens, you register as a sexual predator. And then every time you move into a new neighborhood, all your neighbors are notified.
Yeah.
And it is your duty to say, I am a sexual predator, and tell everybody that.
Exactly.
And that is like follows you around for the rest of your life, and you're never outrunning it, because that's the way it should be, honestly.
Yes. I think so too. And like this guy, like this Terrence Yao, parentheses molester, like
Yeah, Terrence Hill
was
molester.
deemed to not display a strong desire for reform. I think that's what it is. Yeah, exactly. And so why did he get 2 weeks? Yeah.
Yeah, can you imagine like not display a strong, like, how many chances are you gonna give this
Exactly.
guy?
This is why
Yeah.
victims don't come forward, you know? Like imagine having to go through all the
Yeah.
legal process, reliving your experience, like facing the person who did this to you, be scrutinized by the public, and then end up, the person get 2 weeks. The fuck?
It's just not taken seriously.
Exactly.
It's like the 3 steps. Okay, I'm on the article now, and the 3 steps. The 3 steps are kind of interesting. So, but I don't know if these even mean anything because they're also subjective. Like,
It's all deemed to be, right?
yeah, the first step examines the offender's own resolve to change, looking at any evidence of his remorse and the progress of his rehabilitation from the time of offending and sentencing. And then I don't know if he complies with the measures such as counseling programs. This will also factor positively, non-exhaustive factors. The second step, now this one is a bit, like the second step scrutinizes the offender's environment, testing if the conditions around the offender are conducive in helping him turn over a new leaf.
That
Bullshit.
sounds like it could be racist.
That sounds classist
Yeah.
and racist.
Yeah.
All the ists at the same time.
And it's all about how it appears. Like you're saying, it all goes back to just it being performative. But you can. Yeah.
You can fake all these things. That's what I'm trying to say. You can pretend to be repentant. You can pretend to be self-aware.
Yeah, you can be coached.
Exactly.
You can't fake a good family.
And it's not like
That's true,
It's
yeah.
not like the perpetrators thought in any sense that what they did was right when they first did it. Like, of course they knew it was wrong when they did it. So if I don't. It's just if they knew that. If they knew what they were doing was wrong and they did it anyway, like, doesn't that mean that they have the capacity to do things that they know that are wrong? Am I making sense? So why?
They knew in the first place it was wrong. You did the wrong thing. Now go to jail. Go to jail for 2 years. I don't care if that ruins your life.
Exactly. That's why the whole he was young lah. It was just a mistake. Didn't know any better. It's just bullshit. A mistake is using bleach to wash vegetables or something.
Or injecting yourself.
Yeah, a mistake is boarding the train to Pasir Ris when you want to go to Jurong or something. Whatever. Like.
Yeah, we've been there.
So many times. Personal experience. A mistake comes from like a place of ignorance and not knowing any better.
Mm-hmm.
So
where it's it's in like, like you can find the good faith in that. You cannot find the good faith in molesting somebody.
Exactly, and like
I mean, like, I would even say that, you can do very bad things as a mistake. Like, if you grew up in a certain environment and you're a bit homophobic because of the way that your parents raised you, it's shitty and some people won't forgive you for that. But that's a mistake.
Yeah, that's also a mistake.
and I think, like, the most
you
important...
can learn from it, right? But
that's the thing,
before
right?
that, you might not have known that it was wrong to do.
The most important thing is to be open to hearing from people whose lived experiences are different from yours, and to be told that your point of view is not the only point of view in the world that exists. And I think that's the way to make up for it. And then it is also incumbent upon the people who are doing the correcting to phrase it and to say it in a way that makes the person that they're talking to amenable to listening to them. Because there's a way that you can tell someone, hey, this is kind of a shitty thing to say, and there's a way that you can say that makes them feel like they don't want to change, and there's a way that makes them feel like, oh, you have a point, I want to listen to you, I'm sorry about that. And so this everybody kind of has like a part to play in that, and then it only works if everyone agrees, if everyone's on the same page and everyone is like, yeah, we're gonna move forward in good faith. So that's the context for that, for specifically like the example you use about being homophobic, because that's the way someone was raised, and that's the way that changes.
But you go to NUS, you go to NUS, right? You had to go to kindergarten, to go to primary school, to go to secondary school, to go to JC or poly, to go to NUS.
Right.
Like, we can't possibly have failed so badly in educating our kids, that molesting people is wrong.
Yeah,
and yeah,
that's
I mean,
clearly wrong.
Right.
This is not where I thought things were going to go in this conversation, but I think it's good that we got here, because I feel like a big part of it is how repressed all of us are. Like, talking about sex is a bad thing, so we just sweep all of it under the rug, and therefore everyone has so many issues that are not addressed in a healthy way. If we had
I do think it's a cultural thing.
It is, yeah.
I do think
Yeah.
this is a problem in Singapore.
Yeah. So therefore, it's like
A frustrated nation.
It is a frustrated nation, right? Therefore, it's like
Oh,
deal
but
with
it comes out in such horrible ways.
It does,
like,
yeah. It's like deal with your urges in private, but then it spills over and it ends up hurting people and affecting people's lives.
One day we've got to talk about SG Nasi Lemak.
Yeah. That's the most material manifestation of it, and I think we, like, our societal attitudes towards sex and the way we treat sex and how unhealthy that ends up being.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely need to have better education about trauma and how these crimes can seriously affect the victim's life.
Because it always feels like the first step when discussing trauma is to invalidate it.
Yeah.
To be like, I'm strong. I have overcome this. I don't feel anything anymore. No one wants to be the person who's like, I still feel bad.
And that's not how it works, right? And that's why, like, the language that is used is so often snap out of it, suck it up, deal with it.
Yeah.
And like this
Channel 8 dramas.
This all, like, it just precludes and cuts off the capacity to understand. And yeah, there are ways to manage trauma and there are ways to deal with it, and there are certain behavioral changes that you can implement, but all of that has to start from a place of acknowledging that, yeah, it is a thing, it is that bad, rather than trying to downplay it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's good that we all feel really strongly about this, because it is something that needs to be shouted from the rooftops and talked about a lot more, and it's not just in the context of sexual assault, but that is like perhaps the most visible way that it manifests.
Well, one of the good things that have come out of everyone being on lockdown is that creepy old men aren't able to take pictures of girls in secondary school uniforms in the MRT anymore.
Right, yeah.
So
no, it's so scary
Yes.
that like that's something that you have to be afraid of if you're a girl. Like, that's just on top of
Yeah.
everything else, you know.
Like, I feel like
it just kind of sucks.
I feel like we all know somebody who has been sexually violated in any way.
Yeah.
There's
yeah.
no
And who has-
way we don't know anyone. And if
and who has tried to seek like justice and just like decided there's no
yeah, and if
it's more trouble
and,
than
and
it's
if you
worth.
think no lah, I don't know anyone, they just didn't tell you.
Yeah, and that's so important.
Exactly.
It's so important to like hammer that into everyone's heads, that it's not like, again, it goes back to, if it doesn't affect me, it's not a real thing, right? But it does, and you just don't realize it.
I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this Terrence Xiao molester person still going out in public. I mean, it was a pretty weird thing. He like grabbed the front of someone's crotch or something.
Right, and they were saying like a lot
Yeah.
of it goes down to the language, right? Like, a lot of the articles said that he grabbed someone's butt, but it wasn't. It was the front.
Yeah. Either way, it's still bad.
Yeah,
You know?
but I think like it's worse if it's the front, right?
Yeah.
And
Some-
there was just like a
it's
way to
very
downplay
blatant.
it.
And he ran away right after he got caught. That shows that he knew it was wrong.
So he
He
knows.
knows. Yeah, it's not that he had like a
knows.
diminished
Like
capacity.
the thing
or
about
something,
all
right?
the cases we have seen is that the perpetrator always runs away the moment they are caught. Exactly.
the spy camera,
Exactly. It's very
stuff. Yeah.
obvious that they all know that what they were doing was wrong. So why are we giving them a chance? Like so ready to give them a chance. I just so angry.
I hope they get what's coming to them. So
And then inevitably there'll be people who say, oh, it doesn't, like, just talking about it achieves nothing. Why aren't you doing anything physically to change it? But I feel like especially this is something that
Yeah.
talking about it does help. That
Totally.
raising the profile of it and helping people realize that this is much like a realer problem than they ever imagined. I think that's
Yeah.
so key to it.
and just the laying out the sort of frameworks that they use to assess offenders here. It's bizarre.
Yeah, just like the slides. Sometimes I really don't understand Singapore law.
And like, if they decide that a person is motivated enough for reform and rehabilitation, and then they can just give them probation and then have the crime erased from their records, like just not be in their records. So like they can just move on completely,
Right, yeah.
like free of what they have done. Then what about the victim? The victim still has to live with what happened to them. Like,
Yeah, their lives
Yeah.
are changed like for the worse.
exactly.
Forever,
So
right?
like,
Yeah.
why, like, even if they are motivated for reform, there still has to be some repercussions beyond a probation. Like, I feel very
Yeah.
fucking strongly about this.
The thing about it is also who remembers names all the time. I mean, okay, I guess you could Google each person. If you want to hire him, you Google his name, and then all the bullshit comes out. But I don't know. For some of the more common names that these guys have, like, I guess they could easily get away with it.
And I think
Terrence-
that was Terrence Young molester, right? And I think that was the point that Monica Bay was making when she outed Nicholas Lim last year, right? She was saying that so many victims feel bad about naming the
Yeah.
perpetrators and feel like they have some sort of culpability in it or they're guilty somehow. So she was saying like, oh, no more
Yeah.
hiding. And you don't get to hide anymore. And I think that's something that was really powerful and that hopefully does set a precedent. But it's kind of crazy to think that this was 1 year ago already. And now there are so many other things that people are worried about. So it's not like, I guess like that's just the way the news cycle is and that's just the way things are. But it feels like this has to be spotlighted and focused on so much more. And we really, really have to, it has to start from the beginning and it has to be integrated into sex education. There has to be a way for people to talk about stuff like this without being laughed at and without it being taboo. Otherwise, this is the logical endpoint. I'm not saying that everyone is capable of doing this or that everybody or every man, hashtag not all men. but I think like the root of it is there. The root of it is in like that pent up kind of frustration, and then, but it's like it still is a monstrous thing to do, and I think that it's that acknowledgement that everybody is capable of it. It is that scary, and that's how you take it seriously.
Yeah, and I wanted to add, this might be a bit controversial, but everyone knows someone who is a victim of this, but also we all know a perpetrator.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We all know someone. We all know a Terence-io, like
Parenthesis molester.
we all know a Nicholas Lim. Yeah, we know people like this, and
Like, it speaks volumes.
I don't want to say names or where we know these people from, but we know like people who have drugged others, perhaps done even worse, right? And to multiple people, we all know people like that.
And who have groomed people or have kind of taken advantage of being in a certain position in their industry or in their field and use that like cloak of mentorship or I'm just here to teach somebody and to guide somebody and use that to take advantage of someone. Like that's so common.
Yeah. It's
like
it's not just one guy.
Yeah.
This one guy, it was because this person, like people actually were there to witness and people reported it. But these two dudes are just one out of hundreds.
It just feels like it's going to be so hard to reach that place, and we'll never reach that place where people can come forward without fear and come forward and like it leads to results. It just seems like we're never ever going to get there, and it's just depressing to think that, but at the same time I don't think that should stop us from talking about it and should stop us from continuing to make a big deal out of it, quote unquote. Like everyone is saying, don't make a big deal out of this. Why are you making a big deal out of this?
It is a
We
big
need to,
deal.
you know.
I think it's also kind of like we don't really out of respect for the victims, we also don't want to like speculate on people's identity, and they might not like the details of their cases being discussed over and over in the media.
That's true. Yeah, because then a lot of times, I think that's a very, very good point as well. Like, you don't want to be too reduced to your whole life you're referred to as XYZ, victim.
yeah.
Like, while we do want to refer to the perpetrator as XYZ molester, you don't want to refer to the survivor as XYZ victim.
A lot of times like,
And
the
that's-
victim just wants to move on.
Move on, and I think like it very much is a case by case thing, and I think a lot of people don't want to come forward because they're afraid that it will drag on and that their trauma will be deepened. So I feel like the ideal place to reach is to have the safeguards built into place and sort of these structural
Consequences.
Yeah, that's right. And so that if someone comes forward, they don't have to, like, they're reassured that certain things are taken care of and you will not be compromised in this way if you do come forward. Because right now, there are none of those guarantees.
But also, I want perpetrators to see that they will get into deep shit if they do this. And I think that's one way to prevent.
Yeah, I was
more
gonna
of it from
mention.
Yeah,
happening.
and 2 weeks in jail is not deep shit.
Exactly. Like, I want this to follow them for the rest of their lives. Like okay, I'm not an expert for whatever laws and sentencing.
No.
But like
Oh.
there should be something serious enough for at least for the parents to tell the kids like, hey, don't do this later this happened to you. Because right now they can just be like, hey, if you study hard enough, if you show you can go do reform, you can go and touch other people. Like,
That's so horrible.
like, I mean, obviously nobody would say that,
Simply
but it
touch
could be
people.
what two disgusting men say to each other.
I mean, like a locker room talk, right? They're
yeah.
like, ha ha ha, your grade is very good. It doesn't matter, lah. You know.
Yeah. It's just like a whole other frustrating can of worms than I thought that we'd get into in this episode. But at the same
Another
time,
day.
it's still
The
relevant.
nasi lemak episode.
Yes, the SG Nasi Lemak episode.
Yeah, that will be another day though. So we've deviated pretty far from what we were talking
right.
about initially.
Oops.
But I think it's not bad. So what kind of themes overall have we covered in this episode?
Yeah, it does go back to appearances, to how like everything is judged upon appearances.
Yeah.
And in that kind of pursuit of that, it's very easy to lose sight of the individual and to lose sight of how someone is individually impacted, not just materially but psychologically as well. And I think that it's very easy to downplay that when you turn everything into a statistic, into a number, especially during a time when we're looking at how many cases are there of COVID-19 every day. And then it just becomes a number. And a part of it can't be helped. But we have to make sure to not lose sight of the humanity in it. And especially when we talk about foreign workers and the situation of foreign worker dormitories and the instinct to kind of dehumanize and distance them from us.
Jake?
What themes have we covered?
Jake.
I feel like Jeb pretty much.
My work here is done.
Very
Bye-bye.
good.
Okay, it's like I think
Therefore I am.
I think I'll like, as compared to other nations, I'm not gonna say America because that right now it's a pretty low bar if you compare America. But like as compared to other countries, I think Singapore is handling it pretty well. Yeah, and I don't really have a lot of qualms over the measures. Like, I mean, it's not perfect. Like, and things can always be improved. But
Things are not perfect, but can always be improved.
Yeah, and I think like the other thing is when we were talking about like the differences in perception of singing home out the window or clapping for people and those kinds of mass gestures that, you know, one man's masturbatory gesture is another man's psychological no, like I guess no, it's, the second one is supposed to be good, right? Yeah, so one man's masturbatory gesture is another man's
pleasure. No, that's the
No! Well, that works.
Yeah, we're just gonna stop here. No, it was just an excuse for me to say masturbatory as many times as I could. Masturbatory.
This is the repressed side coming
I
out.
mean, our explicit tag.
The more episodes, yeah, the more episodes we do, the more that will surface. The more it will rear its head.
By the way, I'm recording this in the room of my parents.
Oh,
so-
Can they hear
my
us?
parents. No, but I.
No, they can't hear.
They can only hear
you,
what
but
you
they can
say.
hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, they can
so
hear what
therefore,
I'm saying.
Don't repeat the word masturbatory.
All right, I would.
Yeah. But I think like it is, the instinct is to judge. The instinct is to like, how can I point the finger? And in some cases, like, it is justified. In other cases, it isn't. And I feel like that's an extension of the vigilantism of the what you're talking about, like people on COVIDiots of Singapore who are stalking people and following them. I've been following you for the past 100 meters. You've been not wearing a mask. Aha.
Yeah.
And that gives me power over you. So I think there's an extension of that, is that everybody wants to feel like they have power in a time when everyone is feeling powerless.
Everybody wants to rule the world.
Everybody wants to rule the world.
Wow, okay, we're having our own little sing-along here.
We need everyone to sing this here. Welcome
Oh,
to
we need
my
to get Dick
life.
Lee on this.
We sing out the
There's
window.
no turning back.
Oh no, but I'll just scream.
And there was another
because
thing, like,
that's what I do anyway on a daily basis.
Just scream. I just wanna scream.
Am I gonna get copyright stroke?
We are, yeah. No, as long as we don't sing anything from Disney, we are fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a friend of ours, like a mutual friend, who commented that, and I never really realized this, but when Home was written in 1998, it was specifically to target the brain drain. It was specifically to target Singaporeans who had moved overseas and become expatriates in other countries, especially in places like the UK, Australia, and the US. That's why, if you look at the lyrics, it's all sung from the point of view of someone who is not physically in Singapore.
Oh.
Whenever I am feeling low, I look around me and I know there's a place that will stay within me. Wherever I may choose to go, I will always recall the city. You're not there. You're not in the city. That's why you need to recall it. And so it's very interesting that if you dig into it, Home is not about being in Singapore and celebrating it. Home is about trying to engender this kind of wistful nostalgia for a place that you've abandoned for greener pastures. So the implications of that as a solidarity anthem are kind of interesting to contemplate if you take that reading of it as the quote-unquote correct reading of the lyrics of Home.
That's actually really sweet for some reason. Maybe I'm just sentimental.
Right,
But
yeah.
speaking of images and dreams and an idea of what Singapore is, if you were to look from like what I got from this discussion, my brothers in frustration. There is like conscious Singapore. There is what we know as Singapore. So all like that, those Yakun type posters about, okay, this is our history. We also know that we have the MBS skyline and all that, and we have all our hawker food. Oh yes, we can talk about that every day, and our good morning towels. I have a friend who actually calls this like the Yakun or the toast box effect, where we're like nostalgic for something that never really existed. It's just something that we had to produce, but that's another topic. We are conscious of that, and then there's subconscious Singapore. So all these things, like there's like an underlying, like all the things that we were talking about today seem like anomalies, not really anomalies, but they seem like, bones to pick, because it pokes at things in our subconscious nationally. So let's say the mistreatment of foreign workers is now kind of exposed, but then they've always only existed in our subconscious to the majority of Singaporeans, right? So because now the numbers of how many of them are getting the illness are material. All of this is coming up and making people very uncomfortable. So you have these very xenophobic reactions. The sort of like inequality belying home-based businesses and how much minority communities rely on that. That's something that's always kind of been a known secret, but now that it's in the public eye, it makes people angry. It draws up a reaction, and that thing about us cheering for the healthcare workers. The people who actually work those jobs, they might have a bone to pick with it because they know they're not getting paid well. We just have this image of them as these nice nurses we see in these fucking commercials, but then that's our image of them. But then the reality of those jobs, those lie under our subconscious, the subconscious of us having a world-class healthcare system. And then we have the whole, this rape culture thing, right? We have Terence Seo, and how is he so easily forgiven for what he's done, because he's got good grades for some reason. It kind of makes everyone uncomfortable because it exposes that this could be your everyday Singaporean good boy. And I think that around the world, like you said in the very, very first test episode of this virus is a stress test anytime. And then now that that wobbly layer between like the conscious Singapore and the unconscious Singapore is starting to fizzle out because we can't sustain that anymore. We can't sustain that sparkly image because we can't go out. How many times can we watch skyline time lapses of our glittering skyline before we start to feel irritated, because there's no way we can experience that now. Besides, who goes to the CBD so much anyway? I mean, isn't that the kind of feeling you get when you watch like Singapore Social?
Right,
you can't.
Like the association of the material, like we are showing you something material and that has to evoke something emotional.
Mm-hmm. And just now all the subconscious stuff is bubbling to the surface, but it's always, pushed down because the news cycle moves, and then we come up with op-eds, but then we don't really do anything about it. That's why people get irritated, but then the news cycle moves, and then there's also the problem that a lot of our anger on social media is performatory, but and masturbatory in its own way, right?
You said the word.
Yeah, I said the word. And just, and there's a lot to discuss, but I think that we should start to become comfortable with talking about the things that have been lurking under our national subconscious. And I think that this virus is really laying all of that bare, and that we should not be so obsessed with keeping up the image, because that is what creates that very suppressed and angsty and bubbling and boiling subconscious.
The roiling kind of
hiding.
subconscious. Yeah.
I think
that's
that
my
kind of
takeaway.
solidifies what my feelings were about all the Straits Times comments. That was just all these foreign worker numbers making our numbers look bad. Like that feeling I get when I read those comments.
Yeah, it's the us and themness. Like it keeps on hitting that us and them, us and them. Like it just makes we're all in this together such a platitude.
Yeah.
And it robs that of any meaning that it might have otherwise had, and I think that's where the whole thing of like a lot of the first step in eventual genocide. I mean, this is not I'm trying to draw a straight line between that, but it's always about dehumanization. It's always about trying to make the other feel less than human. And I forgot when it was, until like depressingly recent, the 1970s or something. Until that point of time, the Aboriginal Australians were classified as flora and fauna. They were not counted as human beings. Yeah, so I mean, like, I could be wrong. I'm not sure where the source for this is, but it's also like I thought it was plausible when I heard that, and it's very depressing that it was only that recent that was kind of undone.
In Singapore.
Yeah, that's another topic. Yeah,
we have to talk about that one, but we can't talk about that now.
And it's so like and I guess
I want to get in trouble, guys.
You can. We'll just wave to you outside the courthouse. It'll be Drake and I like wiping away our tears as you're being led away in the prison bus.
Oh, no.
We'll continue the podcast.
No, but I think
prison. We'll bring the mic over.
When imagine if I actually pull up, one day I will actually pull up papers about this. Imagine if we talk about that and then I get 2 months in jail and Terrence Xiao gets 2.
Oh no, that is so depressingly plausible. I hate this. But also at the same time, I want to make this very, very clear. Everything that I say that is remotely controversial or that seems to be like a hot take, I'm not here to stir shit. And I feel like there are a lot of people who that's their purpose and that's why they want it. I'm not here for that. And I think I'm here because there are a lot of things that either directly or indirectly have frustrated me about Singapore. There are a lot of things I love and there are a lot of things that I'm grateful for, but everything can always be improved. And the first step to improving something is to kind of poke at it and see how it doesn't work and where it doesn't work. And like sticking your fingers in your ears and saying, la la la, everything is fine, everything is perfect, things are so much worse elsewhere, doesn't help. It doesn't create a ground for things to improve. So that's like my mission statement doing this, or saying anything that could be remotely interpreted as, oh, you're just here to be like a spoiler, to be a fly in the ointment. Like, no, that's not the reason why I'm here and why I'm talking about any of this.
I'm very interested. Like, I want to talk about gerrymandering one of these days. It's one of the episodes, but we need to do a lot of research before we go into that.
We're setting off so many of the built-in content word, like trigger word alarms in the government surveillance system.
Yeah,
beep, beep, beep,
so
beep, 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 beep. It's all like lighting up all over in the room.
Preface and say we will need to do a lot of research before we talk about gerrymandering, because
we will need to watch Amos Yee's videos on it.
Oh no.
Because he does really good videos on it. But unfortunately, that means we will have to watch Amos Yee.
Yeah, and we need to clarify that he has since done and said things that completely discredit him.
I hate him.
Yeah.
I hate his guts. It's terrible.
But that's another thing, right? Like I do want to talk about that. I do want to talk about kind of the evolution of the perception of Amos Yee, and what he represents and what his existence at all says about Singapore. And I think there's a lot to get into that without it just being like trolly and shitposty. Like, there are a lot of very serious implications in that, and even in the idea of him like trying to seek asylum and things like that. Like there's a lot to get into, and I feel like a lot of people just stop at the point of, oh, Amos Yee bad, which of course bad, but how did we get there?
So
and how
did he ever get the asylum?
So he's in the US now.
Yeah, but
right?
like the last I heard, he was
did.
in US custody, like the immigration custody.
No, I think he's no longer in like jail. Yeah, as far as I know.
Okay, anyway, because he went there around the time Trump was elected. So
Oof.
I can't. Oh wait, he has pale skin.
I mean, actually, a lot of the topics that we covered so far are pretty heavy. Like, even if the start of point was kind of light, like the last episode, we did go into some very dark places, but that's probably just gonna be the nature
of the show,
these discussions.
Because I think the way to be receptive to ideas, part of it is if they are delivered in a way that is kind of palatable to you, and that works differently for different people.
Also, I feel anything can be sort of like a sign, or like can be stripped down to how our society, our structures are built. Yeah, so it's like no matter what we talk about, it's gonna become quite serious.
I mean, the podcast name is Frustration Nation. It's an inherently damning name. So
yeah, it is. We are condemned to wallow in it.
Maybe I'll probably talk about this another day. But there's a very interesting concept called the dystopian novum, where the architecture and like a structure of a society itself, the tragedy of a certain society is built into that architecture, and that could go into the gerrymandering stuff. And
right,
just,
and that's also like that brings to mind how so many post-apocalyptic or dystopian media. So much of that uses brutalist architecture, uses the iconography of like Albert Speer, of that kind of
Westworld in Singapore.
Right, yeah, that's a whole thing. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. I'd love to talk about Westworld's use of Singapore as 2058 Los Angeles, and Aaron Paul having his job interviews in LaSalle.
Okay, so I think that I think that we've talked a lot today.
We have, and hopefully all of you who are listening to this, all half of you are enjoying it and have gotten something useful out of it. All half of you, please write back to us. And hopefully the other half will be joined to you soon. She's this horrifying, like, misshapen half man is like dragging himself across the floor listening to this podcast.
Amazing.
Quasimodo. It means half form.
I love Quasimodo.
Yeah, Out There, I maintain, is one of the finest I Want songs ever written. And that movie, I think, like Disney version of Hunchback, has Alan Menken's strongest work. Like, really, really good music. Hunchback is my favorite Disney Renaissance film, you guys.
Atlantis gang.
Okay, well, I think Atlantis is after. Because Disney Renaissance ends at Tarzan.
All right, you nerd.
Because Disney Renaissance is 89 to 99. Right, it is Little Mermaid 2000.
I'm gonna say Lilo and Stitch.
Lilo and Stitch is, yeah, that's like... It's interesting because Lilo and Stitch is around the time of Atlantis, around the time of Treasure Planet. So it's like when Disney was trying to shake off the princess brand and experimenting around with some other things. And so some of those like work better than others. Home on the Range. so and until they like decided to re-embrace princesses and went back into like the second Renaissance with Tangled and Princess and the Frog and things like that. And Frozen, of course. So yeah, so there was like the Wandering in the 2000s, which
I
some
liked
people,
the Wandering.
yeah, which some people find interesting. And like some of that works better than others. Like there are people who really, really love Brother Bear. And then there are people who feel like they should never really have done
Oh,
things
it was
like
a
that.
cute film.
I liked Brother Bear. You mean people didn't like Brother Bear?
Yeah, people
Who
didn't
didn't
like
like Brother Bear. Oh, I remember people didn't like Hercules. That's what
Right,
I
and
remember.
Hercules is still in the Renaissance. So yeah, we're never going to run out of things to talk about is what we have kind of come to the conclusion of. But I think this is where we should
Yeah.
call
It's
it.
11 p.m.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for listening. I'm going to have a lot of fun editing this. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Stopped recording.